What's up, my friends, and welcome into the PHLY Phillies podcast. A happy Monday to every single one of you. We broadcast live from the Xfinity Lounge. As always, we're brought to you by our friends over at Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365 and TrueMark Financial Credit Union. Shop or head on over to any one of their 24 branches to get started today. Hello to you. A happy Monday. I hope you had a wonderful weekend, and we are back for another week of off-season talk in Phillies baseball. Not a whole lot has happened or transpired over the weekend. In fact, really across all of baseball. Free agency is officially open. It opened on the 6th. But nothing really of merit has transpired just yet. So we're still kind of sitting here playing the waiting game and seeing what is going to happen. Which of the Phillies free agents will be back? Who do the Phillies bring in aside from those guys? Or do they pivot and go elsewhere? We have a lot to talk about still because really nothing has changed since we last spoke on Friday. But here's what we've got going on today on the PHLY Phillies podcast. We're going to start with our Monday morning general manager as we play each and every Monday. This is going to be the big one. I think this in terms of the money, the suitors, the contract. It's Kyle Schwarber. We've gotten to the big one. We saved Kyle Schwarber for last intentionally because we are here now in free agency, and now that obviously any team can offer him a contract, be interesting to see what the money looks like. We have to get into two very unique, but also kind of very spicy situations. One, within the Phillies clubhouse. Remember a couple months ago when it was said that Rob Manfred was making his rounds around Major League Baseball, and Bryce Harper had some chipper words for him, or less than chipper words for him, and basically told him to get the bleep out of their clubhouse. Well, apparently there was some follow-up. We'll talk about that. And then from a legality standpoint, there is new and breaking information on the Emmanuel Clase, Luis Ortiz update, which does not look good for either of the two pitchers. And quite frankly, forget pitching in baseball again. We're talking now about potential legal action and obviously we'll talk more about it as the show progresses, and we're going to do that in a perspective way because it's alleged, right? I am a big believer in innocent until proven guilty, and we will give those two guys the benefit of that doubt as well. But we'll talk about the Clase and Ortiz situation as well. And then the last thing that we have to get into today, which isn't in the conversation piece, but we will talk about it, is reports coming out today that there is a huge name allegedly on the market in terms of a trade speculation. It would cost any team a fortune. And I don't think the Phillies will be involved, and I don't think it's because they don't like the player. I think every team likes this player. I don't necessarily think the Phillies have what it takes in terms of trade prospects to make that move work. We'll talk about that at the end of the show. But let's start with Kyle Schwarber, because I think this is the biggest name in terms of the free agent conversation that the Phillies have. I have said before that I think that JT is the most likely to be back because of a couple of different situations, because of the catching need at the scarcity of the position for the Phillies in general, right? Between both their major league and their minor league system, especially after you traded Eduardo Taid. But even before that, there wasn't a whole lot of great catching depth readily available for the Phillies if the future did not have JT. I also think the positional value has scarcity as well. Like we talked about this a few weeks ago, there's only a handful of catchers that I think do both sides of the ball well, who hit well, who are good defenders. JT, even in a reduced capacity, is still one of those guys. And so I think the most likely returnee is JT or Realmuto. The biggest name is Kyle Schwarber. 56 home runs a season ago, a monster year for Kyle Schwarber, just really across the board as we've talked about this plenty, continues to get better and better and better. But let's take a look at Kyle Schwarber's numbers as a member of the Phillies to get an understanding of how good he has been and how he continues to get better as a hitter as he gets into his age 30 season. Here are Schwarber's numbers: 627 games played. This is regular season as a member of the Phillies. The 226 average obviously is a little bit low, but that is, I think, more in part due to A, the type of player that he is, and B, the year that he hit sub 200. Because the last two seasons, he's hit 248 and 240. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that those are like astronomical numbers, but that's the type of player that Kyle Schwarber is. The two numbers that really jump out to you that are more important are the slug and the OPS. The 507 slug, the 856 OPS. And then you get to that next line, nearly 200 home runs, over 430 RBI, almost 280 extra base hits. And then the bottom line of that graphic there, I think, is something that we're going to get into in just a second. He signed a 4-year deal worth $79 million in 2022. But you see the baseball reference page on the right there, or the baseball savant page, there from 2025. It's a lot of red. And the blue is kind of what you expect from Kyle Schwarber, right? High strikeout rate, high whiff rate. What does Kyle Schwarber do well? Pretty much everything else, right? Average exit velocity. When the ball leaves his bat, it leaves his bat hard. Barrel rates, great. Hard hit rates, great. He doesn't chase. He walks a ton. That's why you see his on-base percentage is over 120 points higher in his time as a member of the Phillies as opposed to his batting average. So when it comes to Kyle Schwarber, you have a player who not only is in a unique situation because of his contract that we're going to get into in just a little bit, but in a unique situation where you feel like he's getting better as he gets older. And in fact, on MLB Network the other day, John Morosi was on with the crew on MLB Network, and he used this quote: "I look at his 30s as being similar to David Ortiz's 30s and what he's going to be able to do." Now, if you think about David Ortiz, everybody thinks about David Ortiz, the elite slugger for the Boston Red Sox, the guy who hit 38 home runs in his final season in the major leagues, the guy who hit more than 30 home runs in 03, 04, 05, 06, 07, 10, 14, 15, 16 in his career. But you also had a guy who is lesser known as a member of the Minnesota Twins, who was not a productive hitter for most of his time in Minnesota, with the exception of his final year in 2002, where he hit 20 home runs and hit 272. Now, I'm not saying that Kyle Schwarber wasn't productive before he joined the Phillies. What I'm saying is when you compare those two guys, you're thinking about guys that did get better as they entered their 30s. David Ortiz became a legit feared slugger at 28, where he hit 47 home runs, but his highest home run total came at his age 30 season. He also, at 34, hit 32 home runs. At 37, hit 30 home runs. At 40, hit 38 home runs, and a bulk of those years was in the 90s and lower hundreds in terms of RBI. Now, Ortiz has a better career average than Kyle Schwarber, and it's pretty sizably better. He's a 286 career average, and there were years where he hit well over 300. He hit 332 in 2007. Even at his age 40 season, where he played 151 games, he hit 315 and led the league in slugging and in OPS. I think what JP Morosi is trying to say, he's not comparing the Hall of Fame caliber career of David Ortiz to Kyle Schwarber, but his point is Schwarber has gotten better as he's progressed. I don't see any signs to say that Schwarber is going to slow down in the next couple of seasons. Does he slow down in the 4th or 5th year of a contract if he gets that 5th year? Well, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But the things that he does well, he's doing better as he gets older. So let's take a look at those numbers again since joining the Phillies in 2022. We don't need the graphic, Ethan. I just want to talk through this, right? Since 22, Kyle Schwarber is in the top 6 or better in home runs, runs scored, RBI, walk percentage, isolated power, and hard hit percentage. Let's go into them individually. He's second in baseball since 2022 with those 187 home runs. Only Aaron Judge has more. He's 5th in runs scored. Aaron Judge, Shohei Ohtani, Juan Soto, Francisco Lindor. He's 4th in RBI with 434. Again, no surprise, Shohei Ohtani, but in this case, Pete Alonso and Matt Olson. He's 4th in walk rate. Juan Soto, Aaron Judge. Max Muncy found his way into that list, which is kind of surprising, but those are the 3 in front of him. If you think about isolated power, which basically takes the slugging percentage and subtracts the batting average and says, how good are you in terms of like, what is your raw power when you make contact with the baseball. It's third in baseball in that time. Take a guess who's better. Aaron Judge, Shohei Ohtani. And he's sixth in hard hit percentage at almost 42%. Judge and Ohtani. You get the trend. Those are the two best hitters in all of baseball. And then you add Jordan Alvarez, Giancarlo Stanton, and Corey Seager into the mix. Since joining the Phillies, Kyle Schwarber has been one of the best power hitters in all of baseball. And you can even think about, from a contract perspective, the last contract that he signed was 4 years for $79 million, which, looking back on it, feels like a steal. I think probably on the onset, it might have been a little bit low, but you are talking about a guy who has had years where he has only hit 200 in the past. You needed a little bit more prove it. You needed a little bit more show me. But now that you look back on it, I give you all those numbers where he's close to 200 home runs. He's over 400 RBIs, over 400 runs scored. His hard hit percentages are elite. His walk rates are elite. The things that he does well, he's been elite at. If you think about that $79 million, it is a vast underpay compared to what his value probably was. So I even went on Fangraphs, and Fangraphs has a value calculator. And what they do is they take all of the numbers, the offensive WAR, the defensive WAR, the base running, and it spits out a number. And with that number comes good and bad, and it's put into a vacuum. Now, Schwarber's number isn't as high as you would expect it to be, which is kind of almost expected because he doesn't play defense well. And in fact, he doesn't really play defense at all at this point. But when he does, it's not stellar. And he's not a very good base runner. And those are known quantities about Kyle Schwarber, where you take all of the overarching good with those two negatives, and you still get a super productive player. So Fangraphs, even if you take that on face value, which is a computer-generated number that's put into a vacuum and spit out, he comes out at $91 million over the last 4 seasons, which is a plus $12 million over expectation or over signing compared to what he got at the face value of his contract. I'll tell you, Kyle Schwarber's better than a $91 million player too. You know who tells me that? My eyeballs, the stat line, the back of the baseball card. But even if you want to put all of those computer-generated numbers into a mix and take the bad with the overarching good, it spits out a number that is $3 million per year better than what his contract signed for. And I'll be honest with you, I think he's a heck of a lot better than that. So with all of this, plus the fact that he's in kind of a rare situation, I think that Kyle Schwarber, as many have said, is on pace to break the record for designated hitter, like primary designated hitters contract, right? They were talking about that on MLB Network as well, right? It's a weird collection because theoretically, you could just take any player, a good hitter, and move them to DH, whether it's as their career progresses or you realize they're not a good defender, right? I think about Giancarlo Stanton, who has moved primarily to a DH spot because he's not a defender. He's not very fleet of foot, and he's a vicious swing, right? So you move him to the DH. I think about Masataka Yoshida from the Boston Red Sox. Bad defender, was an outfielder when he came over from Japan, is now a DH because he can't really play the field. So theoretically, you could move anybody into that position if you wanted to. But I do think the Phillies found themselves in a rare spot where it may not be a premier position, the designated hitter, but you have a premier player at that position. And that's hard to let go. And so when you have that type of player, you really don't want to move on from them without a known quantity, a known plan in front of you. So before we get into the numbers, this is usually the part of the segment where we do a mystery player comp graphic to compare the Phillies free agent to like someone who else has signed a recent contract. Now that player usually fits a similar bill as the Phillies free agent in terms of attributes and stats and skill sets and age and all of that kind of thing. Ethan, there is no mystery player comp for Kyle Schwarber, because he's in an interesting spot. As I said, DH may not be a premier position, but he's a premier player at that position who's probably not only going to surpass his number by his career high in terms of large contract by a ton, he's going to shatter the record for DH-specific players getting contracts. Now, Shohei Ohtani is not fair to put in that mix because he's like an entirely different He's a unicorn, right? We've talked about that plenty. Like, he's not just a DH, even though he got the $700 million contract. But in terms of other players who got DH contracts, I looked at Jock Peterson, who got 2 for $37. I looked at Jorge Soler, who got 3 for $42. I looked at JD Martinez, not the one where he signed with the Dodgers, but the one that he signed with the Diamondbacks was in the 70s. I think about Lourdes Gurriel, who still played mostly outfield at the time, also got 3 for $42. We're in an interesting position with Kyle Schwarber. Before we even get to what we think the contract looks like, we're in an interesting position because it's such an unknown quantity. Because we all assume he's going to shatter that record. It's just about how much does he do it by. This is an interesting dynamic when it comes to this particular free agency.
Yeah, he almost changed the approach to the entire lineup as a whole. Like I remember Rob really stuck his neck out to keep him in the leadoff spot for as long as he could, because I think he brought a unique approach in being able to get a leadoff home run or a leadoff walk that no other player really was able to do. And it almost kind of, I don't want to say completely like crossed out his fielding value in any sense, but again, I think it just really, he really brought a different approach that I don't think was seen outside of just like, this guy can't field. Like I think between that and what you see with Shohei, I just really think he is definitely changing the market as a whole.
Well, because now it's universal across baseball with the DH, right? And it has been for a while. It's not anything new at this point. I think we're what are we on year 5 coming up of a universal DH?
Somewhere in that range.
It's somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a new thing, but it is still taking some time to realize you can have a legit player at that position and sign them to a big deal because they're going to play every day. Now, do they give you the fielding metrics? No, of course they don't. Do they give you the, are they all elite base runners? No, of course they're not. They're DHs for a reason. Shohei is a unique situation because he's just the best player in the game who can steal bags and can run the bases, and obviously the pitching is aside. But most of these guys are, I think you're thinking about guys who either can't play the field or are getting a little bit older. But Schwarber really took that mantle and moved it to say, I can be a premier DH. I have to stay locked in. You talk to him, right? He talks all the time about going into the cages in between innings and getting swings in and staying locked in. That's the type of player that you need. You need that mindset. It's a different mindset because it is hard to stay locked into a game when you're not in the field for half of the game. But I think for Schwarber's case, he has mastered that. And so because of that, I think we're in a unique situation where Schwarber, I don't want to say can dictate the market because there is going to be an upper echelon, but I certainly think he's going to be able to take the whatever offer suits him best. So let's get to the big deal segment today, which is brought to you by our friends over at Cherry Hill Mitsubishi. If you're looking for the most affordable 7-passenger SUV in America, CherryHillMitsubishi.com has you covered with the 2025 Mitsubishi Outlander. So the money is the big deal. The years are the big deal, and even the negotiation is the big deal as well, because the one thing that I want to get across, Kyle Schwarber is not taking a hometown discount. I love when people say, oh, they should take a hometown discount. Why? This is a business. And I understand that it's more money than we can ever fathom as everyday people, right? They make more in a week than some of us make in a year. They make more in a year than we'll make in a lifetime. I totally get it's all relative. But I also know that the careers of any professional athlete are finite. They're small sample sizes. Now baseball is probably the outlier where if you can hit or you throw left-handed, you can pitch forever or you can play forever. But that forever, like when we talk about old in sports, it's like, wow, that guy's 38. He's decrepit, right? And the rest of us are like, well, we're just kind of getting our life started at 38. So it is a finite sample size of years that you can sign and years that you can make money. And again, I'm not going to sit here and like shill for millionaires. I understand working class people have a lot of difficulties right now with the financial stipulations of the world. But what I am saying is like, just because they make a lot of money doesn't mean they should take a discount. Unless they really like, there are few and far between players that are like, I grew up in Philly. I love Philly. I've made my career. I'm good with taking $10 million less than what the next team is offering. And yes, John Peace, when I say hometown discount, I don't necessarily mean like where you're from. I mean like the team you're currently attached to, right? And so when people say like, oh, take that discount, why? I wouldn't.
Especially for how much he missed already on that last contract.
Well, that's the thing. Like, again, $79 million is life-changing, life-altering money for everybody, right? But when we think about it relatively, he probably could have gotten more last contract, and he's going to get a whole heck of a lot more this contract. So if I were him, I'm not going to sit here and say, like, if a team comes in at a specific number and the Phillies come in at $10 million less over 4 years, he may be back in Philly, right? Because he likes it here. Here's what I know. The Phillies want Kyle Schwarber back. John Middleton wants Kyle Schwarber back. Dave Dombrowski has made it a point to say he wants Kyle Schwarber back. He called him a priority at the year's end press conference. Most of the, I would say a large majority of Philadelphia fans want him back. I want Kyle Schwarber back. I assume you probably do too, Ethan, right? The power is unquestionable. I also don't know how you replace Kyle Schwarber. I mean, at some point you have to figure it out when his career comes to an end. But when I talk about 2026, I don't know how you replace Kyle Schwarber unless you're able to go out and get multiple power bats, probably one from each side of the plate. But the replication of 56 home runs, 100-plus RBI, a 350 on-base percentage, and all of the things that Kyle Schwarber provides you are really hard to replicate. It's really hard to do. So I would like Kyle Schwarber back as well. And so when you're having these discussions, it's not really about the money unless there's a blow-you-away offer. When you're having these types of discussions, like I think there is probably a $25 million range that the Phillies feel comfortable sitting in between. And listen, like if the Boston Red Sox come out, and because that's another team he's been linked to, if the Boston Red Sox come out and say, hey, here's 4 for 175, like God bless, good luck. Good for you, Kyle Schwarber. Enjoy Boston. You've earned that money, like good for you. But unless that happens, I think the Phillies' competitive offer will stay within the ballpark of most other competitive offers. So I do think they've got one ready to go. And I think at the end of the day, I do think Kyle Schwarber is back. I don't think it's a certainty that Kyle Schwarber is back. I think that Boston's going to be in the mix. The Mets will be in the mix. I could see the Yankees being in the mix, even though I don't know what they would do with Stanton at that point. But maybe that's a good problem to have. I think there's a plethora of teams. I think Cincinnati's in the mix. The Cubs should be in the mix. Now, I don't know if the Cubs are going to spend any money because they're upper echelon mid-market to lower echelon a big market team that masquerades as a small market team because they don't seem to have any kind of interest in bringing Kyle Tucker back, which is insanity to me. But I do think there's going to be a ton of teams that are interested in Kyle Schwarber services, and they should. I think Kyle Schwarber ends up back in Philly. So my best guess is 4 years and $130 million. That's $32.5 million a season. In terms of AAV, it would put him somewhere between 15 and 20, depending on what the rest of free agency shapes out to be this offseason. But I think that's where you're probably looking, is somewhere in the 4-year, $130 million range. So that's my big deal takeaway. I think Schwarber is back on a 4-year deal worth about $130 million. Ethan, I asked you right before the show, so this is kind of a gut reaction, a visceral reaction. Do you think that Kyle Schwarber is back, and what do you think the contract looks like?
I would really like him to be back. I think for all the reasons we've talked about, again, finding a player of that replacement is going to be practically impossible unless you get a miracle from the baseball gods.
Sure.
But I would like to see somewhere around 4/120, 4/130.
So you're in the same ballpark.
Yeah, it's funny as I was thinking about whether to give a 5th year or not, because that is going to mean a lot to him.
That's my big concern. Yeah. I don't really care too much about the money. The 5th year is where I go, might be tough.
Yeah, that's where kind of I stop. And it reminded me of Jimmy Butler in that free agency, whether allegedly he really wanted the 5th year, the team wanted to give 4,
right,
and it all fell apart. So I hope it doesn't come down to a stipulation like that. And I hope, I can certainly understand why, but I think if you're going to swing for the fences, I feel like if he asks for a 5th year, you don't really have much leverage on that. If you're really
I think that if you are hell-bent on bringing Kyle Schwarber back and the 5th year is what stands in the way, then I guess you're going to have to do it. I think that because of what he provides this lineup, and I know nobody wants to hear run it back anymore. They're tired of hearing that phrase. I think he is, and I'm not saying postseason, like postseason productivity the last 2 years has not been strong from anybody, and Kyle Schwarber is included in that list with the exception of, what was it, Game 3, he hit the 2 home runs against the Dodgers. But really, his offensive productivity in the postseason has not been particularly strong the last 2 seasons. Nobody's has, for the most part. So I understand that, like, the run it back thing, people get agitated by that conversation. But the last 2 years, he's hit 305 and 311 against lefties' fastballs. He's gotten better and better and better against lefties. He had a 782 slug and 16 home runs off left-handed fastballs this year. In the last 2 seasons against lefties, he has 49 two-strike hits. Listen, I know the average in total against the breaking balls isn't particularly good. It was 165, which I guess is kind of a regression back to the standard. But he was so good against lefties early in the season, which kind of buoyed that number a little bit. I think that when you're thinking about life without Kyle Schwarber, it doesn't begin this year, or it probably shouldn't begin this year. I think Schwarber's back, and I do think it probably ends up on a 4-year deal, but if the 5th year is the holdup, I think you're right, Ethan. I don't know if there's a whole lot of like wiggle room if they want him back.
Yeah, 100%. And again, this comes down to age and production. And I mean, I understand all the metrics. At this point in time, with how your last 2-3 playoff years have gone to this point, I think you just don't have a lot of leverage when it comes to that. And if you're really serious about the commitment of this core, you're just going to have to do it.
All right, so drop down in the comments what you think Kyle Schwarber's contract is going to look like. I said 4 for $130. Ethan's in that similar range. Would you go for the 5th if it was required? And what is the number in total, right? So I said 4 for $130, which is $32.5 million a season. I've heard less. I'm not sure it's going to be much less. I think in that 120, 130 range is kind of where we find Kyle Schwarber. But I do think that Kyle Schwarber is back. So drop in the comments, 1, do you think Schwarber's back? And 2, what do you think the contract looks like for 2026 and beyond? That is we just did our big deal segment. That's kind of the opening salvo of today's show. There was a lot to get into when it comes to Kyle Schwarber. He is the most important free agent, I think, in terms of productivity for the Phillies. On the other side, we have a lot to get into still. We have to talk about this Bryce Harper thing because I don't know if I should say this, but I'm almost getting like mafia vibes from Major League Baseball right now. It's kind of weird. We'll talk about that. Then we'll talk about the Clase and Luis Ortiz situation, which obviously does have actual legality to it. We'll talk about that. And then one player at the end of the show that has reportedly been put on the, I guess unofficially put on the trade block. We'll do that all on the other side. It's the PHLY Phillies podcast. We broadcast live from the Xfinity Lounge, and we will be right back after this. All right, if you're thinking about heading to an away game, whether it's to see your basketball team, your hockey team, or your pro football team, you do it with our friends over at Game Time. They give the advantage back to you, the fans. It is the hack for unlocking incredible tickets and experiences all within a few taps. It's unbelievably easy to use, and fees are always included with just one toggle. You don't have to worry about those hidden fees on the back end when you're putting your credit card information in, and all of a sudden you go, whoa, where'd that money come from? Game Time wants you to know exactly what you're going to pay up front. And as I've told you before, the 3D seat map is the way to go. You can see exactly where your seats are. No obstructed views, no sitting behind a foul pole, no sitting, caddy corner to the end zone and you're trying to, turn your head like this and watch the whole game. Because sometimes stadiums and ballparks, especially the older ones, do have that. So if you want to know exactly where you're going to sit before the game and before you buy the tickets, that's where Game Time comes into play. They offer incredible zone deals, the lowest price guarantee, and incredible ticket coverage so that you know that you are covered in case something happens, whether it's in your personal life or with the team or the game itself. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app today, create an account, and use the code PHLY for $20 off your first purchase. Terms to apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code PHLY for $20 off. Tap, ticket, go. Download the Game Time app today. All right, while we're here, let me tell you about our friends over at Xfinity. You know who's playing tonight, your hometown football squad, right? But even in the afternoon or later in the week, I should say, you've got pro hoops, pro basketball, college basketball is going on, pro hockey's going on, all of it. And if you call yourself a sports fan, you have to get Xfinity, because if you want to go over to your friend's house and watch the game and it's buffering and lagging and switching between apps, that's not a good, it's less than ideal. And in fact, it's not something you should have to deal with. If you call yourself a sports fan, you have to get Xfinity. It's the ultimate sports destination where you get all the best games and your favorite teams all in one place. And the way that you watch becomes next level. Sometimes you can have 4 games going on at once, and with crystal clear optics and enhanced 4K sound, you're going to feel like you're at the ballpark or the arena or the stadium anyway, and you don't have to leave the comfort of your couch. So next game day, make sure that big fan in your life isn't a big fail. Learn more at Xfinity.com. Xfinity, imagine that. Restrictions do apply. Multi-view requires Xfinity 4K capable TV box. Welcome back to the PHLY Phillies podcast. Tyler Zulli, Ethan Hartley. Hello to everybody in the chat. Want to say hello to you. I see Pat Ryan, Stephen Paul, Broad Street Bullies, Ray Schumacher. Let me make sure I didn't miss anybody. Kevin at iRock Philly, Molly and Barkley's Life, John Peace, Stephen Paul. Did I miss anybody? Who else did I not? RF. If I didn't get a chance to mention your name, I apologize. Thanks for being here. Thanks so much for hanging out with us on this Monday edition of the PHLY Phillies podcast. Let's see. Stephen Paul says would think Schwarber offer might be around 30 to 35 a year. I was at 32 and a half, so very similar on that. Broad Street Bullies says Kyle, the 5th year, he'll be manager player anyway. What, Jackie Moon? Player, owner, coach, Jackie Moon. Are you a semi-pro guy, Ethan? I love that movie. That's one of my all-time favorite Will Ferrell movies. I know it's not like the first thing that comes to people's minds. Like you think about Old School, you think about Anchorman, of course you think about Elf. I love semi-pro. There are things I quote from semi-pro, but because it's not like the movie you go to, sometimes I'll say something and people will be like, dude, what are you talking about? Like the one scene that I always go to with, oh my gosh. He was on SNL. He's in it for like 10 minutes. He's the fan. You know, the guy sitting courtside. Do you know the scene I'm talking about? So Jackie comes up to him. He's playing in the game. He's in the game and he travels, right? And he walks up to him. He goes, where'd you get those nachos from? You get them from the concession stand? The guy goes, nah, I brought them from home. And Jackie takes the nachos and punts them into the stands, you know, because he's trying to run a business here. Yeah. And the most underrated part about that entire scene is at the end, he's got nachos all over him and the nachos are going flying. And Jackie Moon goes down the other side of the court and guy goes, all right, let's go Trops. And I'm just like, I love this movie so much. The other one that I quote all the time is damn it, Vakitis, learn bleeping English. I just think it was just like at the time was so hysterical. Now, like probably in today's climate, not as appropriate, right? But at the time of the movie was funny, right? But I love that movie so much, and I don't think it gets enough credit. But I always think about semi-pro for whatever reason when I think about player managers is player, owner, coach Jackie Moon come out and have to do a halftime performance against the Bear. Anyway, let's get back to the baseball talk. All right, we have to get into this Bryce Harper thing because Ethan, this is taking on a life of its own, right? We talked about this back, what was it, like July when Rob Manfred was making his rounds. I think it was right about the All-Star break. And Rob Manfred was going into clubhouses and basically saying like, hey, how can we make baseball better? And how can we, how do we improve the game and all that kind of stuff, right? And I guess like the reports were that it got a little bit heated. And Bryce Harper was the one that stepped up and was like, basically, if you're going to do this, get the bleep out of my clubhouse, right? And was pretty vocal to the commissioner of baseball, which is like going to your boss and telling him to kick rocks, right? Like, I don't know what would happen. Now, granted, Bryce Harper has 7 billion% more sway in Major League Baseball than I have at All City. But I don't know what would happen if I went to the heads of All City and told them to kick rocks. I probably would not be on the show on Wednesday. And I probably would be updating my LinkedIn. Right? But like, I get it. Bryce Harper has cachet. He's Bryce Harper. He's one of like the 5 or 6 faces of baseball. And I guess Rob Manfred probably in the moment didn't want to start a feud, and probably also does understand that Bryce Harper has some of this cachet, right? But the quotes that have come out, obviously this is all alleged. We're going to use the word alleged a lot in the next half an hour of this show. Yeah. This is all alleged, right? But he told him to get the bleep out of the clubhouse, and then basically one of the high-ranking MLB officers, unnamed, this was in a podcast that was from Alan Walsh, from Agent Provocateur is the podcast, Adam Wilde and Alan Walsh. And the quote from that high-ranking official was, "That's how people end up in a ditch." That sounds very mafia-like to me. Like, again, alleged, perspective, not sure if it actually happened or not. But if those are the words that an MLB official used, that's very kind of scary.
Because in what logical scenario is that a thing that would actually happen, right? I mean, we're talking about baseball, just two guys in a locker room having a conversation. Like,
sure.
Like it would be so out of context to say that, unnaturally. Like if we're actually, if we're actually talking like mafia guys, and there's context to back that up and like this is something that could actually happen. I've maybe the person who has said this has done this before. Like we're talking about the commissioner of baseball,
right?
Like a professional sports league. Like it just doesn't make a lot of sense to say that.
I just think that like should there have been probably a private conversation about the whole thing? Yeah, probably, right? Like Harper probably could have had a little bit more of a private conversation about it, because it was about the salary cap, salary floor argument, right? And that's where Bryce Harper kind of put his foot down. But if this is true, right? If this is like truly what was said, and again, allegedly comes from a source of the MLB or of the high-ranking official, right? This just seems like it's crossing the line of things that are appropriate to say in response versus things that are absolutely not appropriate to say in response. Like I said, I kind of jokingly said this feels like mafia ties, but that is something that the mafia would say. Like the old cliche, like
because
when people say the
that.
swim with the fishes thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that is legitimately something somebody with mafia ties would say to somebody else. I'm going to like go take care of the situation. That's really, really kind of terrifying if we're being honest.
Yeah. And I also thought before he said that line, he said, you like something about like, how dare you say that to a commissioner? Like,
yeah, it was, don't ever say that. Don't ever say that again to the commissioner.
Yeah. But putting himself on such a high pedestal, like that's not going to make it any better if you're really trying to like de-escalate the situation. Like I just felt like it was very allegedly inflammatory of his ego.
So Dallas Braden, right? Former A's pitcher, is a broadcaster now. Tweeted this: "We've got MLB officials allegedly telling Bryce Harper that people, quote, end up in ditches for talking to the commissioner the way that he did about a salary cap floor. We've got 2 players indicted and potentially facing 65 years for 65 for fixing at bats, and not to mention the potential of a lockout." Yeah, what a week for baseball. Now, I know the lockout obviously is a much longer term issue. That's 2027. But like that is legitimately, like the stuff with Bryce Harper is legitimately kind of scary.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you de-escalate that, if that's true. Like this isn't just going to get like swept under the rug and go away. Like somebody basically told you like you're going to be dead.
Yeah, and again, like this is the content. We're just dudes talking in a professional baseball locker room. We are not the mafia in any sense. So why would we ever just say something so out of context like that?
Yeah, why would that come out of your mouth?
Yeah, and that's also not like a cliche thing to say either.
It's not a tongue-in-cheek like lost in translation.
Yeah, it's not like slang for
Didn't
anything.
mean, yeah, right, exactly,
Yeah,
right.
you just don't say that. Or
that's just not something like that's just not something that comes out of people's mouths naturally.
Yeah.
Like that's something I think about. Somebody brought it up in the chat, right? It feels like it comes from a movie, right? That's a script line. That's something you say to be the tough guy in the movie. I don't know. I don't know where this was, like, what would prompt you to say that? It's just crazy to me. I'm sure we're going to have more on this. I know that this is not over by any stretch of the imagination because, again, this is just like not something that sweeps under the rug. Like, I don't know where you progress from here, but like something's going to happen. There's going to be a fallout to this.
Yeah, and there needs to be some sort of addressing to that quote, or else
Right.
I think it just looks really bad to not say anything about it.
All right, let's pause. On the other side, we have to get into, this has kind of become a little bit of a downer show in the second half. I apologize. But we have to get into the Emmanuel Clase, Luis Ortiz situation because more information has come out. Is the affidavit came out, I believe? Or there was legal paperwork that was released recently. What? Yeah, exactly. Yes. Sorry, wrong verbiage there. We'll talk more about that on the other side. And then we will wrap things up with a little bit more of a fun hypothetical conversation. It's the PHLY Phillies podcast. We broadcast live from the Xfinity Lounge. We'll be right back after this. All right, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary with Bet365. You find out why 90 million users have teamed up with Bet365 because you live stream 780,000 events each and every year across 78 different sports. And how about this? There is some early payout going on. You know it across football, both pro and college, right? With the early payout across football, if your team goes up by 17 points, you have an instant winner on straight bets and parlays marked as winners. All you have to do is download the app and use the code PHLY365. And when you do that, download the app, create an account, deposit $10, place a bet for $5, and you'll get up to $200 back in bonus bets, whether your bet wins or loses. Again, use that promo code PHLY365. You can use the bonus bets on spreads, totals, player props, futures, and so much more. And you find out why it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 and physically located in PA. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, please call 1-800-GAMBLER. Listen, we all know that feeling, the overwhelming, a little bit terrifying sensation about, I found my special someone. Now I got to get them the special ring. And when you walk into the jewelry store, you feel overwhelmed because you have so many questions. What are the 5 C's? What's lab grown versus organic? And what's the right cushion? What's the right fit? What size should I get? What's my budget? It's a lot of overwhelming questions. But with Bucci Jeweler, Joe and Michelle want to make sure not only are you treated like one of one, they want to make sure you're basically treated like family. They're going to walk you through the process from the initial consultation all the way through the finishing product, and they're going to find out your budget. They're going to work what's best for you. They're going to find out the selection, the style, and they're going to custom make something right there in-house that works for you and your partner. So when it's time to pop the question, you know that ring is going to pop, and your partner is absolutely going to say yes because not only they love you, but because they have an awesome ring that's going to go on their finger as well. So next time you need that perfect piece, head on over to Joe and Michelle at Bucci Jewelry and Design. 30 plus years in the game, voted Philly's #1 jeweler year after year. Over 1,000 5-star reviews speak for itself. Check them out at BucciJewelers.com and tell them the guys at PHLY sent you. All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the PHLY Phillies podcast. Tyler Zula here, Ethan Hartley, and we got it. And you, of course, in the chat. Don't want to discredit you. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you. Let's get into this Emmanuel Clase, Luis Ortiz conversation. Now, Ethan, I made this disclaimer when we did the initial conversation, and I'm going to do it now because I think that it's fair and it's poignant, and it would be hypocritical for me not to. I understand that sports betting, I just did a read for it. We're presented by a sports betting site. I understand that sports betting and sports are intertwined now, and I don't necessarily think it's going to go away. I think that it is here to stay, and I think that it probably will continue to grow. And I have to make that acknowledgement because it would be unfair for me to say, hey, I'm talking about sports betting and somebody who could potentially face jail time. Oh, yeah, by the way, you have a sponsorship and you have these and blah, blah, blah. I think we have to be looking in the mirror enough to understand that we are having these conversations with that caveat in place. With that being said, we are not using our sponsorship nor our ad reads to cheat the game of baseball or to get I shouldn't say cheat the game of baseball, but maybe to get a leg up on these gambling sites. So the latest information has come out on Emmanuel Clase and Luis Ortiz. Now, let's take a look at this graphic that Ethan made first to show you kind of what some of the latest information is surrounding the Clase and Ortiz information. Both of these guys were charged with wire fraud conspiracy, honest service wire fraud conspiracy. I don't know what the difference is, to be honest with you. Legality-wise, I don't know, but that's what it was. Money laundering conspiracy and conspiracy to influence sporting contests by bribery. The top charges carry a potential punishment of up to 20 years in prison. So Clase allegedly invited a bettor to a game against the Red Sox back in April, spoke with him by phone just before taking the mound. 4 minutes later, the indictment said the bettor and his associates won $11,000 on a wager that Clase would throw a certain pitch slower than 97.95 miles an hour. That's just one instance. We have seen multiple videos that have surfaced over the last couple of months about Clase and Ortiz basically spiking first pitches because of the alleged implication of bettors taking you can bet the next pitch. Is it going to be a strike or a ball? Betting ball, and then them spiking a pitch in spots that don't feel like they're competitive pitches. Now, there was one instance, Ethan, where Luis Ortiz, I believe, was on the mound, and this alleged instance was arising, and Andy Pages swung at the pitch. And you can see and pretty clearly hear in the video, Luis Ortiz let out an expletive that starts with F and ends in UCK. Obviously, we can't say it anymore.
I didn't hear that
TV,
part, but I did see the video where
that it's one of many. Again, alleged. We're going to use that word a ton. But it certainly feels like there is mounting incriminating evidence against these guys. So when we first had the conversation, we were talking about, would Emmanuel Clase and Luis Ortiz ever pitch again? Right? Are they going to get lifetime bans in baseball? Right? I'm not talking about baseball bans anymore. We are legitimately talking about prison sentences. If these indictments, if these guys are found guilty on indictments. This is really bad. This is really, really, really bad. Like, it's one thing, I guess, to bet on the game, which you probably shouldn't do anyway. Not probably. You just shouldn't do if you're a professional player, right? I get it. I understand that, again, gambling's intertwined with sports. This is entirely different. This is impacting the game. And you can say, oh, it's one pitch. I don't think it matters. This is really bad.
This is rigging. This isn't this is
game rigging for sure.
100%.
This is like, you have direct impact on this. And then the other thing that was, intriguing to me is the amount of money that has been tied to these bets is not a lot of money for guys that are professional athletes. Like, you're talking about $12,000, $5,000. That's like the numbers that are allegedly coming out, right? Like, this is not a $10 million, right?
Yeah,
and I said to Anthony Gargano right as the show ended this morning, like, this is probably the biggest betting thing since Pete Rose. And he stopped me and went, no, this is worse. And we both kind of looked at it and went, this is probably the biggest betting scandal since the 1919 Chicago White Sox, where they threw the World Series. Like, this is really bad.
Mm-hmm.
We went from, and again, I'm going to say we're using the word alleged. I believe in innocent until proven guilty. The evidence doesn't look good for these guys. Face up to, like you said, the top sentence is 20. Mm-hmm. That's one of the individual sentences.
Yeah.
They could face up to, 65 years, I believe, in prison?
Yeah, 65 of all of it in total. Yeah, the details are very crazy. They sent like gifs back and forth after Pahe swung on that first pitch. But yeah, and to add to your point earlier, you were mentioning it. They wouldn't see a large majority of that money. It wasn't for them. So it was very interesting how they were even convinced to do this.
So my next question is, and this is me thinking out loud, there's no evidence to this, there's no allegations to this. This feels like it runs deeper than two guys just getting caught gambling.
I would think so.
My worry is this feels like there's ties to some more sinister things. And again, this is just me speculating. I don't want to get too deep into the weeds, but it does, for the money that was being offered, it does feel like there's more foul play involved.
Yeah, 100%. And it was very interesting. I mean, the details versus the NBA case versus this one, they were publicly made that, this is ties to, some sort of
Jonte Porter and all those guys. Like
the mafia was involved. There's
right.
the
illegal
malicious
and
people like involved. Where it'd be very interesting to see what kind of power. I mean, they don't know better, but they know the implications to some extent. It's not like that. It's not like they were never ever told that don't do this. So it is very interesting to the other side of that, of what kind of person is involved to make them do this. And again, not see much of that money. It was another detail that was very interesting and almost a little sad if again, alleged this would happen.
Like, just from a sheer money standpoint, again, like Jeff Passan tweeted this out. They alleged that Ortiz was paid $5,000 for throwing an intentional ball on June 15th, and Clase given $5,000 for facilitating it. They did it again on June 27th, and the payment was $7,000 each. Like, $5,000 is a big win for me and you if we were to make a bet.
100%.
$5,000 for Emmanuel Clase. I think somebody put out the number. It was
I looked it up. His career earnings is like $15 million,
right?
Which is not a lot in a baseball scope for the kind of player he is. But again, life-changing money for any.
Here you go. So person. At minimum, was set to make a little over $38 million. 12,000, which is the 5 plus the 7, obviously. 0.0003%.
What's the math to like the average salary of being paid to do something like what?
Yeah,
like
I mean,
10,
even if
like
you take his
$6
million this year for $12,000, it's still it's a percentage of a percentage of a percentage.
That's really small.
I hate to speculate because I don't like to do that. Mm-hmm. I just get this gross gut sense that this runs a lot deeper than a couple of guys throwing pitches for $12,000.
100%. It was actually the last detail that was almost a little sad reading that. I think either all or some of the money that he had received, he had asked for it to be sent home to like work on like housing repairs like in his home country. So not to sympathize at all, but it was just a very interesting detail.
I think we talked about the Harper thing and said I think we're just scratching the surface. We are really just scratching the surface on this because this like legitimately has legality behind it. I hate to pair the two together because like we talked about the Bryce Harper thing and we were saying like, wow, that's really crazy. I can't believe that somebody in a high-ranking position would say that. This is much, much deeper than that. I don't know how this is going to end, but I think at this point, the conversation of like, wow, they might not play baseball anymore. That is not important to the levity of this conversation.
Well, and this is the third sport that it's now happened in. It was the NFL a couple of years ago with Calvin Ridley. Now the NBA and MLB are seeing it. So it's clearly a massive problem. There are so many scandals that are not to the same degree in college athletics as well. So clearly this is becoming a problem when the two are becoming so intertwined and, something has to be done about it in some sort of sense.
All right. So we're going to continue to monitor this because this, I don't think, is going anywhere anytime soon. We'll have to have these conversations throughout. I think it's crazy. It's very, very, this is just a crazy situation. We'll talk more about it throughout the offseason, I'm sure. We got to pause on the other side. We will wrap up with some fun. And some hypothetical conversations. This is the PHLY Phillies podcast. We broadcast live from the Xfinity Lounge. We will be right back after this. All right, if you're looking for the most affordable 7-passenger SUV in America, well, then look no further than CherryHillMitsubishi.com, because they've got you covered with the 2025 Mitsubishi Outlander. And not only that, but you can take unbelievable advantage of a great deal. 0% APR financing for Pennsylvania residents for 60 months on the entire 2025 lineup. So it's not just the Mitsubishi Outlander, which is an award-winning great car, but it's also the entire lineup where you can get 0% for 60 months if you live in PA. Now, offer is not valid with trade-in and it is subject to credit approval. Not all applicants may apply, but when you combine that with the best warranty in the automotive business, which is 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain, plus 2 years of included limited maintenance and 5-year roadside assistance, you get an incredible offer that can't be beat. Stop in today, tell them PHLY sent you, and get a $100 restaurant.com gift card just for taking a test drive or completing a trade appraisal. Listen, I know people buy Mitsubishis elsewhere. I just don't know why. Drive home today in your new Mitsubishi, just minutes from all bridges, and available 24/7 at CherryHillMitsubishi.com. All right, we love you. We thank you. We can't appreciate you enough for being a part of our programming. We want to hear from you. We want to see what we can do better. And the way that we do that is by community response. So we've set up a survey for you on allphly.com. Head on over to allphly.com/survey to help us give you to get some feedback from you to help us shape the content that you love the most and make it even better. It only takes a couple minutes. You can scan the QR code there on the screen, or again, head to allphly.com/survey. It only takes a couple minutes, and you get an opportunity to win some cash. You get a $100 Amazon, or you're entered into a chance to win a $100 Amazon.com gift card. Again, we love you. We thank you. We can't do this without you. And we appreciate you taking some time to help make the podcast even stronger. All right, I want to end on this note today, Ethan, because we did have some, heavier news. This is more hypothetical, but surprising nonetheless. So reports, this comes from Bob Nightingale, and a couple other people have kind of verified this conversation. Apparently, the Diamondbacks are, quote, motivated to move Ketel Marte. So the reasoning behind it is monetary, and the reasoning behind it is contractual. So apparently, they are interested in getting off of Ketel Marte's contract because he will very soon get to the 10-5 rights, which activates the no-trade clause rights, which would mean they would not be able to move him without his consent moving forward. So 10-5, for those that don't know, are for vested veterans who have spent 10 years in Major League Baseball and have spent at least 5 straight seasons with the team that they're currently on. So, for example, the players that would have 10-5 rights for the Phillies are, of course, Bryce Harper, if he didn't have the no-trade clause, are Aaron Nola. Did JT Realmuto make that number yet? Obviously, he's a free agent, but I don't know. He had, prior to the season ending, he had 10-5 rights. I believe would Wheeler have hit 10-5? He has a no-trade clause too, but I think Wheeler would have hit 10-5 as well. Yeah, he's got 10-5 as well. Handful of players on the Phillies would have 10-5 rights. Currently on the roster, that doesn't have a no-trade, just Aaron Nola, right? But a bunch of different players have 10-5 rights, and what that does is really limited trade opportunities unless your player facilitates the trade. What that means is if Ketel Marte is available, everybody should be interested. Like Ethan asked me before the show started and said, what was your phrasing? Like, would you replace Bryce and Stott?
Yeah, like would you facilitate some sort of way to
$1 billion
replace
%.
him
$1 billion %. I love Ketel Marte. I think Ketel Marte still, even with all the national recognition that he's gotten over the last couple of years, is one of the most underrated players in all of baseball. He is, I know he's 32. Defense is what it is. Like, it's not terrible, but like, it's a step down compared to Bryson Stott, because Bryson Stott, I think, is an elite defensive second baseman. But his fielding range value is better than average. He's at a 1. He's at the 74th percentile. But it's the offense, man. It's not just a right-handed hitter. It's a switch-hitting second baseman who has hit no less than 25 home runs in each of the last 3 seasons, and even going back a little bit further than that, has hit no less than, it's each of the last 3 years. He also had a 32 in 2019. There's been some shortened seasons because of injuries and things like that. But he had 36 in 24. He hit 28 in 25 in just 126 games played. it's not a swap, right? It's not like, oh, I will give you Bryson Stott and that's enough. You need a whole heck of a lot more, which includes pitching. Diamondbacks want pitching. We all know the Diamondbacks want pitching. And not only do they want pitching, they want young, controllable pitching. If Ketel Marte became available, do you ask the question, would you want him? 1,000,000,000% plus some more. Do I think the Phillies have what it takes to acquire Ketel Marte? I don't. And here's the reasoning. Do they have a player that the Diamondbacks would be interested in? 1,000,000%. His name's Andrew Painter. I don't know if the Phillies want to make that move with the uncertainty about Zach Wheeler's future. Plus, he's getting a little bit older. With the uncertainty of Ranger Suarez maybe or may not re-signing in free agency. With the uncertainty of a Jesus Luzardo extension. With the uncertainty of what Aaron Nola is down the stretch. Really, the only guy that you have certainty in past next season is Christopher Sanchez. So, while the starting rotation is still going to be very good, especially if Zach Wheeler can get back healthy, and even if he gets to like 85-90% of what he was prior to the blood clot and the injury, the starting rotation is still going to be very good. Don't get me wrong. But I do think Andrew Painter being the only of the Phillies' premier young pitching prospects would be the determining factor for them. I think about a team like the New York Mets. Now, the Mets have said they're interested in moving certain players. Jeff McNeil's name has come up. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to move a second baseman because they're acquiring a second baseman, but it is interesting that Jeff McNeil's name has come up. They have 3 young starting pitchers that I think are all of quality. Now, if I were to rank them, and by the way, thanks to everybody watching. I apologize, Ethan. Thanks to everybody watching on our streaming platforms, our Roku, our Samsung, our Xfinity. Head on over to allphly.com to watch the rest of the show. We are officially in overtime. Now, to get back to this, I think the Mets would make a ton of sense because they have 3 young quality pitchers that I think are all going to be good, right? And yes, I apologize. McNeil plays the outfield now. I don't know why I said second base. McNeil's an outfielder, but for the most part, played outfield last year for the. Or I apologize. I guess split time. Played 79 games in the outfield last year. Plays a little bit of both, right? 110 games last year, 2 years ago, was down to 79 this year. So
pretty much just like
has shifted into the outfield a little bit. But my point being, right, like they had Luis Angel Acuna there for a little bit, right, when he and Lindor were both playing together. They're trying to figure out the second base. Brett Beatty, I guess, has played a little bit at second, but mostly more of a third baseman.
Very empty spot that they're just trying to fill.
The point
with
being is like Ketel Marte is an upgrade over whoever they have in that spot.
Yeah.
So getting back to the pitchers, right? They have 3 guys that I think would be of interest: Brandon Sproat, Jonah Tong, and Nolan McLean. If I were the Diamondbacks, I would ask for Nolan McLean. If I were the Mets, I would say you can have Brandon Sproat, which I think if I'm ranking the 3, I would put him 3rd. So maybe there's a middle ground involved. Maybe Jonah Tong is that middle ground, and it's Tong plus somebody else, Major League ready, right? You're mixing and matching. It's not just 1 for 1, but it's mixing and matching. I think that the Mets would make a ton of sense for Ketel Marte. Now, I'm not saying that is a headline or anything like that. I'm not saying there's any kind of any kind of speculation between the two. I just think the Mets would make a ton of sense in this situation. I don't think the Phillies have enough in terms of the prospects that they would want that aren't named Andrew Painter to make to facilitate that type of move. Any other team that would make sense to you for Marte? We're back with the production stuck button.
Sticky buttons, yeah. Putting me on the spot, it is hard to think of somebody right off rip that would have someone in chat mentioned Paul
Does
Skeena.
the Mets make sense to you?
100%.
Yeah.
The Mets are the one team that when all the other of their older pitchers had depleted, they felt a need to bring up and showcase 3 young starters that you could either stick with
Yeah.
or move one of them for another.
And by the way,
spot
I
that
think
you
the
have.
Mets go out and get a fairly sizable name in the offseason to get into the rotation too.
100%.
Because I still think they need another arm. I think McClain is a stud. I think he's going to be in the major league rotation from day one. You might even see something where like he gets the home opener nod as like a, hey man, you're on your way.
Mm-hmm.
I think Tong is going to be really good. Sproat, I like. I think to me, he might be the least of the three, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
But I think when you think about those guys, plus they have a couple of other names that I haven't mentioned, I think the Mets make a ton of sense. And then, listen, I'm not saying it immediately translates to wins, but like you think about a top three of Lindor, Marte, and Soto. Whew, that's a nasty top three, man. And then like Kevin and IROC Philly points out, like, do they go get a Ranger type of arm, right?
I'll sob.
Do they make the big trade for Tarek Skubal? Right? They're going to be in the mix. I think if Skubal's available, they should be.
Same reporter said him and Skeens are not getting traded.
Listen, if I were the Tigers, you better offer me your entire farm system for Tarek Skubal. This whole thing about the Tigers are interested in potentially moving Tarek Skubal. Re-sign the guy. Spend some freaking money. Stop being a joke. And I'm not just pointing out just the Tigers. This is a problem across baseball. Pirates should lock up Paul Skeens to a 10-year, $400 million deal. I'm being facetious with the number, but you get my point, right? You got these generational type players. Stop being cheap. Spend the money. Go spend some money, you losers.
And of course, the only team
God
that
bless
ever
John
could-
Middleton for willing to spend money. It hasn't meant they've won World Series, but thank you for spending some freaking money, man. Sorry, go ahead.
The only team that probably could ever just go, here's our farm system, is LA.
Sure, they don't care.
Yeah.
They've done, and the thing is with
But
LA,
they have the names where it's like, okay.
Their farm system for 10 years now has been highly rated.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the guys have panned out, some of them haven't. And it's like every time they move a guy, right? They moved the catcher in Washington. Good hitter, can't catch.
Yeah.
Gosh, I'm blanking on his
God,
name.
it's on the tip of my tongue.
But he was in the Trey Turner deal.
Yes. No, this is killing me. I know the face of Ruiz.
Keibert Ruiz. Yes, thank you. Keibert Ruiz, right? They move Keibert Ruiz, and then they go, oh, yeah, by the way, we have Dalton Rushing. And we really like Dalton Rushing, but we also have Will Smith locked up. Dalton Rushing's going to go play the outfield or whatever. He's going to DH. Oh, yeah, maybe Dalton Rushing is available in trade conversations this year if you have the right package back, right? Like, the Dodgers, I don't know if the Dodgers' top prospects are always actually as good as they say they are. But they consistently have a top prospect pool.
I mean, minor league reporters are the one rating them that highly every single year, as opposed to the rest of the field. But yeah, you have like Hope and DePaula. It's like, sure, we can just shell out for whatever. And
Alex Freeland, Jackson Ferris.
Yeah,
it's still a good.
It's just name after name, just like you're always. It's almost just like a dedicated spot for your next Dodgers big prospect that.
So coming off back-to-back World Series, and we're going to wrap up. We've gotten way off tangent, but coming off back-to-back World Series, they have the 13th, 20th, 34th, 45th, 64th, and that might be it. Oh, no, 98 and 100.
A dream.
Where they got 7 in the top 100 after winning back-to-back World Series and spending $7 trillion. You spent the GDP of some small countries.
A dream.
And you have 7 in the top 100?
A dream.
How many of the Phillies got off the top of your head?
3.
Justin Crawford's 54. Aiden Miller's 32. Andrew Painter is 16.
Yeah, I don't think.
It's 3.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think Eduardo Tait was on the list before they traded him.
100% was.
Woo! I love baseball so much.
0 World Series to show for.
Listen, that's not how I wanted to end the show. The conversation to end the show is, if you found a way to facilitate a Ketel Marte trade, you got to figure it out. I don't think the Phillies have enough to do it. I think if Marte gets traded, which I'm not sure he will, but if he does, watch out for the Mets, man. watch out for the Mets. That's going to wrap up today's show. Thanks so much to everybody for hanging out in the chat. Whether you were here for the whole show or just a little bit, I appreciate you. I love you. I can't thank you enough. Philadelphia coming your way at 1:30. We'll be back with the next PHLY Phillies podcast at noon on Wednesday. Hopefully we have some more free agent and offseason information to bring you. But until that time, we love you. We thank you. Can't wait to chat with you again on Wednesday. Big thank you to Ethan Hartley for producing and co-hosting today's show. We'll be back with Philadelphia in about 20 minutes right here on PHLY, and we'll talk to you on Wednesday on the PHLY Phillies podcast.
We all silly like the mayor.